Mama looked real close at Bi's mouth, closed her eyes for a second like she was praying, and finally said, "Daniel, you get in there and call the hospital and see what they say we should do. Joey and Kenny, go with your daddy." Dad and Joey went crying into the house. I stayed by the brown bomber. I figured Mama was clearing everybody out for something. Byron did too and looked at Mama in a real nervous way. Mama put her scarf around Byron's face and said, "Sweetheart, you know we gotta do something. I'ma try to warm your face up a little. Just relax." "Okay, Mama. You know I love you and wouldn't do anything to hurt you, right?" If Mama was trying to make Byron relaxed, she wasn't doing a real good job at it. All this talk about love and not getting hurt was making him real nervous. "What are you going to do, huh? Don't hurt me. Kenny, help!" Mama moved the scarf away and put one hand on Byron's chin and the other one on his forehead. "No! Help me, Kenny!" Mama gave Byron's head a good hard snatch, and my eyes automatically shut, and my hands automatically flew up to cover my ears, and my mouth automatically flew open and screamed out, "Ew!" I didn't see it, but I bet Byron's lips stretched a mile before they finally let go of that mirror. I bet his lips looked like a giant rubber band before they snapped away from that glass. I didn't hear it, but I bet Byron's lips made a sound like a giant piece of paper being ripped in half. When I opened my eyes, Byron was running to the house with his hands over his mouth and Mama following right behind him. I ran over to the mirror to see how much of Byron's mouth was still stuck there. The dirty dogs let Byron get away with not doing his share of the windows, and I had to do the whole car myself. When we were finally going to Aunt Sydney's house, I decided to pay Byron back for punching me in the forehead and getting out of doing his part of the window scraping. Joey was sitting between us, so I felt kind of safe. I said to her loud, "Joetta, guess what? I'm thinking about writing my own comic book." "What about?" "Well, it's going to be about this real mean criminal who has a terrible accident that turns him into a superhero." Joey knew I was going to tease Byron, so she sat there looking like I should be careful what I said. Finally, I asked her, "Do you want to know what I'm going to call this new superhero?" "What?" "I'm going to call him the Lipless Wonder. All he does is beat up superheroes smaller than him, and the only thing he's afraid of is a cold mirror." All the Weird Watsons except Byron cracked up. Mama's hand even covered her mouth. I was the only one who saw Byron flip me a dirty finger sign and try to whisper without smearing all the Vaseline Mama had put on his lips. "You wait. I'm going to kick your little behind." Then he made his eyes go crossed, which was his favorite way of teasing me. But I didn't care. I knew who had won this time. Now that we've finished reading Chapter 1, it's time to do our dialectical journal. We start with our study questions. What was the trick Byron and his friend Buphead played on Kenny? So I have to think back to the middle part of this chapter. And if I need to, then I'll reference the book. You're going to do this on your own. I'm going to write a sentence frame for you. You can feel free to use this so that you can have a complete sentence. So, the trick Byron and his friend Buphead played on Kenny was blank. Okay? So you need to write down what was the trick that Byron and his friend Buphead played on Kenny. Go ahead and pause, fill out that answer. Now for number 2. What kind of relationship does Kenny have with his brother Byron? So I'm going to think of this. I'm going to say Byron always blank, and this is why they have a blank relationship. Go ahead and use that frame to respond to question number 2. All right, now the next thing that we do is we find a quote from the chapter that meant something to us. I have an example here. I've included the quote from the chapter, I've put quotation marks around it, and I've noted the page number. You can use my quote, or you can find your own. Remember that you want to find something that stands out, something you have a thought about, or something you have a question about. I could have done a lot of stuff to him. If it had been me with my lips stuck on something like this, he'd have tortured me for a couple of days before he got help. I think this is a really important passage because I'm able to make a connection to it from something in my own life, and I think it tells us a lot about these two characters. The first chapter is usually really important for character development, and this quote is really showing that. The next thing that I need to do is my response. Now, the response I'm going to leave up to you. Yours will apply specifically to your quote. And what you're going to do is you go back to these sentence frames right here. Use any of these sentence starters to write a response. Remember that your goal is to score a plus or a check using the rubric. Is that rubric one more time. So you want to score that plus or the check. So you want to be thoughtful, insightful, relate to bigger ideas, use strong word choice. So for example, I might make a connection. This character reminds me of my little brother because I was always picking on him like Byron. Or I could do a visualizing. When I read this, I imagined that they have a really long relationship that has been rough and tumble. You can use any of these frames to write your response. When you're done, you're going to return to this journal entry scoring sheet. We're going to write today's date, 11/14. This was Chapter 1, Part 2. And then what do you think your score is? Is it a check plus, a check minus, or a minus? Leave this column blank because I will check that part. Okay, that's a good part to stop at if you've made it this far. But if you still have time left over, independently read Chapter 2. It's a really good one. Once you've finished reading Chapter 2, you'll respond to Chapter 2's study questions, write a quote from the chapter, and write a response. Good luck on this. It's a lot of work, but I know you'll be really successful.